cut my hair. My hair needed to be cut. And I figured sooner rather than later. Am I right? Well, it is done now. Don't love it. Hi, I'm Josh and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about 10 of my favorite time travel books of all time. If you know me at all, you'll know my favorite thing in books, movies, shows, anything is a time travel mechanic. I absolutely love and fall for every time some type of time travel mechanic. I have read a huge number of time travel books, granted not all of them, but when I look for books, if it has a time travel mechanic in it, even if it's just tangential, I will have a much higher chance of reading it. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to recommend 10 of my favorite time travel books. Some of them are well known, others not so much. There are some pretty popular ones that aren't included on this list. It's either because I haven't read them, because they don't interest me, or because I did read them and I didn't like them. There's at least one book I talk about in the Golden Girls book tag, The Time Traveler's Wife, where you can see why I didn't much care for that book. Let's just get started. I want to start with something that is going to be kind of not technically time travel, and that is Gloria Brian's History of the Future by A.S. King. I like this type of time travel because it isn't strictly time travel. Gloria Brian gains the ability to see deep into the future and deep into the past, and this type of mechanic is really interesting because we get sort of to travel ourselves in the form of information without really getting the effects of having those worlds affect us outside of our mental state. And it makes a really interesting narrative mixed with A.S. King's just fantastic, weird writing style, which I loved. And for that reason, I wanted to mention here. Another one similar to this might be A Woman on the Edge of Time, where she also sees visions in the future. The next one is also in the kind of weird time travel, and that's going to be, I think, book 3 of the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire, and that's Beneath the Sugar Sky. And I don't want to get too much into plot here because that would reveal things. But what I liked about this is that it had a time travel mechanic. And one thing I love about good time travel mechanics is that they often require a very firm grounding and strict rules to make them work. And the reason I liked this book was because she somehow was able to make time travel work, make it work with literally no rules around it. And that is why I love this one so much, was because we have basically time travel occurring without any real logical way to explain it. And when you go all in like this, when it becomes the gimmick, it was all for it. Going to complete opposite end, where it is very much just a kind of like a very plot heavy book. I don't have the cover here, but it's going to be Replay by Rent Grimwood. I read this one a few times. This is about a man, basically a 40-year-old white man who has a heart attack. He dies, wakes up in his 20-year-old body, gets to relive his life. I liked this book not because it was particularly creative, although I think it was one of its first of its kind to do this sort of groundhog narrative. I liked it because, as a white man, I was able to sort of picture myself in his shoes. I don't think this is necessarily one of the best time travel books, kind of defying the name of this series. It's the name of this video, but I do think that it's definitely one of the best ones that I've read in the sense that it worked for me. Now, it doesn't really do a good job of exploring other perspectives. It's not a very woke book in any sense of the word, and it's very much just a very superficial book in as far as writing style and plotting, but it was enough. It was exactly something I used to fantasize about, like in high school, just can you turn back time or something with your memory, and I just thought it was a really fun book, and so it's something I had to include here. The next one was a better time travel book, and that's going to be The Accidental Time Machine. This one I actually don't remember a lot about. It's something about an MIT technician or researcher who was fired, I think, or something, and he accidentally creates a time machine, can send stuff into the future. I'm not sure if it can send it to the past. And it centers around some type of something that's going on. I think he has to prevent some type of apocalypse. I'm not sure. I thought it was creative when I read it. I wish I remembered more about it when I'm talking about it, but it is what it is. I'm more likely to reread it because of that. The next one's going to be Seanan McGuire's The Middle Game, another book by Seanan McGuire. This one I have only read once, but I really want to reread because I loved it. It's one of those books where time travel is a really big part of it, and I don't think it's a major spoiler because it opens up with saying timeline whatever. To go any deeper would be to give away the plot, which I won't. But I love this book because I thought it was just a really creative use of it, and I thought it was a fantastic character work for the most part, with really good protagonists that you really connect to, at least I really connected to. And for that, I just love this book. I highly recommend it. I thought it was a fun time travel book and just a great book overall. Another one like that is going to be The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. Now this one is like that in the sense that it is a great time travel narrative while also being a great book. This is a story of this man who basically is like the guy in Replay by Ken Grimwood, I think what's called. And it's about him being able to basically remember going back in time and then remembering his memories in the future. Except it's a little bit different because he doesn't necessarily go back in time. He just dies and he wakes up in his younger self. Like he is his younger self. He relives his life every time with all of his memories. And it's essentially his life as told in a very nonlinear fashion where things are changing just slightly and he has to try and circumvent it and understand why it is that's happening, considering that this shouldn't be happening since he's already lived his life once, twice, three times, four times, and yet things are different. Why is that? And I love this time travel book. Highly recommend it. I think I've only read this one once, twice. I really need to have a time travel binge where I just reread some of my favorites. And honestly, maybe this is the time for that because shit, this is a very stressful time. Let's focus on the books. This is the Time Travel's Almanac, edited by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer, and this is a collection of short stories set into 4 different distinct sections. It's a very thick book, but because there are 4 sections, they basically have a variety of time travel stories. And I think this is a really good way of introducing yourself to that type of variety that exists. Because there are a lot of different ways of thinking of time travel as far as the rules go. Like, are you creating another universe? Are you rewriting the universe that we have? Or are you a part of the universe? Basically, unchanging cycle of events, and it's all in here, and I love it. I haven't actually finished this, but I've gotten through a good chunk of it, and it's something I'm not forcing my way through, but I am absolutely loving it, and it is essential to anyone who loves time travel. The next one's one of my favorite books of all time, probably my favorite book of all time, Kindred by Octavia Butler. This is, again, another book that has a fantastic plot and a fantastic use of the time travel narrative. In this book, a modern-day black woman is pulled back to the antebellum South when slavery is still around, and this was a fantastic look at race and generational racism and generational hatred that gets passed down, and also sort of privilege and also strength. It's a book that really highlights the strength that Black Americans had during this time, the strength that they must have had to be able to survive such a dark and abusive time. The next one is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. What is wrong with me? I love this book. I've read it maybe 4 or 5 times. It's about going back in time to save JFK. Another really thick one. This is just a great period piece, as well as just a fun look at what you can do with changing time. Then this one, it looks at what might have happened in the world if JFK had survived. If you don't know much about this, besides the obvious one, I think King started creating this not long after JFK died, and then apparently he stopped because he felt like it was too soon, basically. And I think that sort of explains why he would pull, like when he published this in 2012, and so why refer to an event that was so far in the past. It makes more sense now that he started developing the idea when it had just happened. And from that sense, it makes more sense. But in any case, it makes for a great look back in that period of time. It has Stephen King, so it's fantastic, easy to read, fun writing, and it is sort of a mix of like 4 different story plot lines, basically, because there's 4 different parts. You basically have a number of different types of stories you get to enjoy in here. For many people, they might think it's too long. Personally, I love it. It's one of those books that when I read it, it's not because I'm looking for a very concise experience. I'm just looking for a long, almost like an amusement park type level experience with Stephen King. And then lastly, the last book I'm going to talk about is Surprise, a nonfiction book, From Eternity to Here by Sean Carroll. And I wanted to talk about this because it is a book that studies or discusses the nature of time itself in the real world. And as someone who loves time travel, it's hard not to wonder what reality is actually like, because it's fun to think of all these fictionalized stories and all the ways that things could go if we had this sort of rule set up. But what is the reality of it? What is time as we understand it? Why does time go from the past to the future and things like that? And he does a fantastic job of exploring this concept of time, why it is that we might experience it the way we do, and whether or not the now is all there is. And I just love this book. It's one of the few books I made a point to actually make notes of. I actually have a review of this on my blog if you're interested. And maybe I'll reread it someday and give a full video review. Okay, there you have it. Those are 10 of my favorite time travel books. I've read more than that, and I'm curious to hear what your favorite time travel books are, if you've read any, or if you have any recommendations for me. I'm going to read more, and I'd love some recommendations for that. And I would like to do more of these videos where I can talk about more of my newest favorite time travel books. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day. Remember to stay safe, and goodbye.